Hi folks, welcome to Set Apart Homestead. This is Travis here at the Prepared Homestead. Thank you for stopping by to watch. It means a whole lot to me today. We're going to talk about something that, yes, I know we talk about a lot on here. It's talking about the status of the global food system, because I want to bring this back up again with some new information of how I believe it's getting quite critical. We're going to talk about the storms that's happened a week ago in the upper Midwest, Iowa, Illinois, Indiana. There's some things that's not being talked about a lot on the news. There's a little bit out there, but you're going to have to dig for it. So we're going to go into that of what went on there and how that's affecting or will affect the food system as a whole, and then some of the other things that's going on that combined together is something that we should definitely be concerned about as preppers and just as people in general that will like to eat, because doesn't everybody, right? So stay tuned, because I hope that this is going to be a good video that will give you some good information to kind of maybe some of you kind of kick in the hindquarters to ramp up your prepping. Because of what it looks like is kind of heading towards us. Before I get started, go ahead, if you will, click the like button and the subscribe button to the channel. Sure appreciate it. It helps us out a lot just in growing the channel and spreading the word. One of the things that is going on that people just, I guess, don't get it, the average person, is that there's always stuff in the news, and sometimes it's really important stuff, but a lot of times it's also distracting you from the things that are of maybe greater importance. And so that's kind of where I see this whole food supply system that is slowly in a way, but honestly I don't think it's slowly anymore. I think it's more rapid, that it is crumbling right before our eyes, and so many people just don't get it. You can go back to, last year with the flooding and the poor harvest numbers that came about here in the United States because of weather, mostly the flooding that went on last spring. And it's just kind of snowballing from there. And we'll get into more of that later in the video. Before we get started though, speaking of food, if you're looking for a place to get some long-term food supplies, freeze-dried stuff in buckets and cans, things like that, you can click on my site, preparewithtravis.com. That's right, preparewithtravis.com. The front page there shows food in buckets, kits that you can get, but there's more. If you scroll up to the very top, it says My Patriot Supply. That's the company that I go through. If you click on there, you can go to their full site and see all the products there, water filters, number 10 cans, bags of food, whatever you'd like. Some really good products there. Anyways, so last Monday, there was a storm that went through the upper Midwest. They're calling it, I believe, a Derecho. This is a rare type of storm for those of you that haven't really heard about this or kept up, because, unless you really dig for it, it's not been in the news a whole lot. And there were 100+ mile-an-hour winds in some places in Iowa, Indiana, Illinois, that area up there. And the damage that it did was so great that you can actually see it from satellite imagery. You can see the fields, the cornfields, where the corn is laying down. It's a different coloration than the rest of the state, where there's places where the corn's still standing up. It did a massive amount of damage. Now, the corn crop up there was just getting ready to be harvested, probably in the next couple of weeks or so. The corn was basically plumping up, and so it was almost there, and then this happened. Now they suspect that there may be some of the corn that might kind of pop up, because in a normal storm, corn sometimes will get knocked over, but it'll pop back up on its own. But in the preliminary reports from the state ag department where they've gone out, the vast majority of everything they've checked, the corn stalks are completely broken off, which means that the corn is no good. The plant is now dead. And but that's only a portion of it. We're going to get into the rest of it. There's more to it, so stay tuned. But wait, there's more. They're suspecting, and it also damaged soybean. Iowa is the #1 producer for corn and soybean in the United States, and they have about 24 million acres of row crop acreage, meaning there's 24 million acres that's set aside for row crops. And out of that 24 million, almost 9 million acres of corn and almost 6 million acres of soybean was damaged and destroyed due to this storm. So we're talking over half of their total acreage of row crop acreage in the state has been destroyed, and they're the largest producer in the United States. So that's quite significant. Some of the estimates are coming out that it's possible that 20, maybe even more percent, but we're, the conservative estimates that I was seeing, and right now you have to understand it's so early after the storm, they're still getting out there trying to assess the damage. But some of the early estimates they estimate between 18 and 20% of the nation's corn crop has been destroyed because of that one storm. That's significant. It's very significant, and it's a lot of food. You have to understand, and most of you I know get this, that nearly everything that we eat has corn in it. Corn, if you break down the American diet, the vast majority of our foods contain corn, soybean, and wheat, or one of those three. And 2 of those 3 were damaged a lot in this storm. So you've got that. You've got this massive amount of damage. And these numbers that I'm giving you are only out of Iowa, which did get the largest amount of damage of the storm. But there was certainly some farms that were damaged in Illinois and Indiana, and I haven't found any numbers out of those states just yet. So we're just focusing on Iowa. Now, the other big thing that happened with that storm, and many of you have probably seen, are these grain silos that were damaged. As bad as that sounds and looks like, there's some more to it that's not really being talked about. Those grain silos had more than just your normal amount of corn in them. The corn prices have been low for the last couple of years, and then with also the flooding and the low amounts of harvest from last year, a lot of the farmers had been storing up, had not been selling their harvest for the last 2 years. So the vast majority of the farmers in Iowa had not sold much of their corn harvest over the last couple of years, and they had been holding it in these grain silos, hoping that they were kind of playing the market a little bit, that the market would kind of go back up, and then they could dump that corn and make a little bit more money than they would have. Except now, a lot of that corn has been completely destroyed due to the storm. The numbers, the latest numbers that I looked at are not, they're just estimates, and there's not even an actual number. But the state agriculture department and the USDA is saying that they estimate that we're talking into the numbers of tens of millions of bushels of corn has been destroyed. Tens of millions of bushels. That's a lot. And like I said, they don't have the exact numbers yet because they're still assessing it. So we have this year's corn crop greatly decimated. Of course, there's corn in other states that's growing, but when the major producer of corn has lost a large chunk of their corn crop, that's significant. And then a large amount of, not really reserves, because they're not national reserves, that national reserves don't exist of grains and stuff, but these are farmers that's been holding on to their harvest for the last couple of years, hoping to dump it, and then a large amount of that's gotten destroyed. So here's a couple of things that a lot of people aren't talking about. Number one, that's a lot of food, current food that's in the ground that was almost ready to harvest, and then food that's been harvested for the last couple of years that's now gone. Secondly, your average insurance, crop insurance, and insurance that you can qualify through USDA only covers your crops in the ground. It doesn't cover crops that are being stored in silos. You have to get special insurance for that. And from what I was reading, statistically, not a lot of farmers, these big farms, carry that type of insurance. So not only are we out the food, but it looks that a lot of farms are going to be losing lots of money, probably in the numbers of the tens of millions, maybe even hundreds of millions, total damage between the current crops, the past harvests, and then the building structures that were damaged. This is going to decimate the farming industry once again in that area. It's going to greatly hurt it, at least. When you consider the last couple of years has been really tough on the farming industry, there's been a record amount of farms that's been going bankrupt over the last couple of years already. And then you add to that this big storm that went through and decimated hundreds of farms, tens of millions of acres of farmland. That's huge. And that is eventually going to get down to us, the consumer. We're eventually going to feel that. And so you take that and add it to all the other things that's already going on, okay? Like last year having a poor harvest because of the flooding. We've already mentioned that. China used to be the second largest exporter of corn and wheat. They were second to the United States of exporting, producing enough to export. In the last couple of years, they've not been exporting, they've been importing because they're not producing enough. And then this year, there's this coronavirus that they went on over there, but even worse than that, they had massive locust decimation, and then they're having some horrible flooding throughout certain areas and regions of China, dams that's broke and massive amounts of flooding. And the numbers already coming out are that they're going to be trying to import even much more food than they normally would have the last couple of years. So they're looking for food. You've got Lebanon that just had that massive explosion, bombing in Lebanon, which took out 85% of their nation's grain storage by that big silo that was there. They were, I guess, dumb enough to store 85% of their nation's grain in that one building, and it's gone. There's been the locust that went through Africa, parts of India, parts of Russia, China, back in the spring, that decimated, millions and millions and millions of acres of farmland. We have the grand solar minimum that is affecting somewhat, not greatly, but it is affecting. Then we have also the big one is this coronavirus, and whether there's a real virus or not, it doesn't matter. What's happening is in the beginning of the year, we had all these farms that were they couldn't get enough labor to plant or to harvest. And so a lot of crops either didn't get planted or they didn't get taken care of. Harvests were dumped early on this year. Lots of potatoes, lots of onions, other crops like that, because they didn't have a place to sell them. They didn't have venues to sell them through. Restaurants were closed, schools were closed, stadiums were closed. All this kind of stuff was shut down, and so these farmers had to dump all this. The same way with milk and with eggs and with beef. The meat industry has taken a huge hit through this, through shutdowns, and they're not able to process, and they're not able to get their food to the market, so prices have gone up. I mean, it's just one thing after another. The trucking industry is, while you would think that it's doing good, it's kind of starting to take a little bit of a hit. The industry, like canned foods, there's been shortages on the cans, the raw materials to make the cans because of the lack of imports. There's been even shortages of the paper to make the labels. All this kind of stuff, aluminum can shortages. The point that I'm making here is not to scare everyone. If you listen to me at all, you know that I'm not the type to hype things up. What I'm trying to get at, folks, is that there are a lot of things happening all at once, and it's painting us kind of in a corner when it comes to our food supply. And our nation's food supply is already very fragile. Most people don't know that, but it is true. It's not a very strong system. We've depended too much on monoculture. We've depended too much on massive, huge farms, and all this transportation of food, and very little on local food production. And it's going to hit us, and it's going to hit us hard. And we're going to start seeing food shortages. We're going to start seeing skyrocketing prices of foods. It's already affecting other countries. There's already been numbers coming out that the prices of food here in the United States is going up because of the shortages, and then also because the dollar is losing its value because of the massive amount of debt that we keep going in. Watch the price of gold. It's ticking up all the time. So I'm saying all this to tell you, like I say all the time, is to get out there and stock up. We've got to take this seriously. For instance, this past week, we went to one of the local farm stores that we sometimes go to. It's not the one we usually buy our feed from for animals, but this one was running a really good sale. It's crazy, but hey, they were running a good sale on some of their feed products. And it just happened that the majority of the products that we buy for our animals was what was on sale. So we went and stocked up. We pretty much bought a truckload of chicken feed. We bought like a truckload of chicken feed. We bought bags of other feed that we use, because it was on sale, and we know that number one, even if prices don't change, buying it on sale like that in bulk saves you money in the long run. But in 6 months, the prices could be very different. A year from now, the prices could be very different. We have to start being aware of what's going on in our world. That's something that the media is very good here in the United States of not just telling you what they want you to hear here in the United States, but especially what's going on around the world, because we're not so isolated anymore. We live in a very global economy, and we are affected here in the United States by what happens around the world. And it's like this. I use this analogy all the time. It's like a big balloon that's got little holes in it. Have you ever taken a balloon, you fill it with water, and you poke a hole in it? It doesn't explode. It starts leaking, but you keep poking enough holes in it, and it's gonna, and keep filling it with water. It's eventually gonna come apart. And what's happened is there's a lot of holes in that balloon, and we've been putting Band-Aids on it, but eventually it's going to break through. It's or a dam that's got holes in it. We're putting patches on it, and the holes are becoming so rapid that we can't keep up with the patches, no matter how much money gets dumped into the economy. So, be aware of what's happening. There's this thing, like I said, in Iowa, this big storm. It's created a lot of damage, and it's still, a lot of these numbers are very preliminary because it's so early on. They haven't even gotten to some of the areas that's been damaged yet, and so those numbers could get worse as the days go along. If you're able to stock up on animal feeds, able to stock up on dry goods, on canned goods, freeze-dried goods, do it now, please. It's getting to the point, I think, personally, things are getting critical when it comes to our food system. And you add all that to the political system and how everything seems to be kind of falling apart. Look at it this way. If in the end everything works out fine, you've not really wasted a bunch of money if you buy things that you can go ahead and use anyways. And that's what we do. It's not like I've invested a bunch of money that's just going to sit on the shelf. We can use those foods that we've bought, and that's how you should do it. And when you do it that way, you're not really spending extra money. You're just investing your money up front, as opposed to buying that food spread out over 6 months to a year. Folks, just do what you can to stock up, because I have a feeling, and I'm sometimes wrong, but usually not on this, prices are going to start going up, and it's going to be hard to get a hold of some of this stuff. All right, folks, thank you all for watching, and I'll catch you in the next video.